Can't say you wasn't warned. I didn't tell you so, pertaining to supply chain shortages and issues. Listen, please.
A massive drought in the Panama Canal is causing a crisis in the shipping industry, sinking water levels so low that fewer and fewer ships are able to get through. CNN's Patrick Ottman joining us now with more on all this. Patrick, what are you learning?
You know, it's known as the path between the seas, Fred, one of the 7 wonders of the modern world. You just think, for the last 100 years, thanks to the Panama Canal, a commerce that needs to go between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans doesn't need to go all the way around South America. It has a much more direct and quicker route. But now climate change, like so many other things, is threatening the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal is running low on water. A persistent drought, caused in part by the El Nino weather pattern, has left water levels dangerously depleted. Now, the global supply chain is under threat as the holiday season approaches. The 80-kilometer waterway connects the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans and is a vital route for transporting goods, handling an estimated 5% of world trade. The canal was completed in 1914, revolutionizing how goods could be transported, and further expanded in 2016 to meet the skyrocketing demands of global commerce. But over the last 20 years, decreasing rainfall has reduced the water level of Panama's Lake Gatun from 27 meters above sea level to 24 meters.
Call
it climate change, whatever you want to call it. The true fact is that precipitation levels are changing. And as I have said repeatedly, the Panama Canal is the only global maritime route that uses fresh water.
Canal officials have imposed draft restrictions, forcing ships to lighten their load. A ship's draft limit is the minimum depth of water it can safely navigate. And if a ship is carrying too much cargo, it risks getting trapped in the canal. Since May, ships have had to reduce their cargo by as much as 25%. The Panama Canal Authority has also limited the number of vessels authorized to enter the canal each day, creating a bottleneck, with some ships waiting as long as 14 days to get through. As of Tuesday, 116 vessels were waiting to pass. The canal's administrator warns the number of authorized vessels could decrease further if the drought continues into next year.
In the coming months, I think there's the possibility in March and April, if the rain pattern remains the same as now, there would be possible water restrictions. Now, before reaching this point, the Panama Canal would have to make further restrictions on the number of transits. It will depend on the amount of water in the Alajuela Lake, for example.
This has led to rising freight costs, which are likely to continue in the months leading up to both Christmas and the Chinese New Year. The canal's administrator has said the drought could wipe away $200 million in revenue in 2024. And he says they may need to build a new dam or connect the canal to another nearby lake to keep water flowing, as the ever-increasing thirst for global goods crashes into the new realities of climate change. Patrick Ottman, CNN.
Thank you so much.
And some of those new realities.
And I told you over a year ago that there was going to be supply chain shortages. That's what God showed me. I didn't know exactly how that there was going to be supply chain shortages. I just knowed to be a messenger in telling people what God had told me to tell you, that there was going to be supply chain issues. And you keep in mind, whenever they're talking about stuff like this, not only is there going to be cost involved, but it's not just about car parts. It's not just about TVs or radios or telephones. This could be something crucial like medication or instruments that goes inside of clinics and hospitals to be able to use, to be able to help people. I mean, whenever you slow the production down, it said there was over 116 vessels, I think is what it said, waiting in the bottleneck. And I've known now for probably the past 2.5, 3 years that there was a major shortage in Mexico, to the point that Mexico City was on like a tier 2. I don't know what it is now, but I've been watching the weather since then, and they don't have large massive amounts of storm activity as far as rain, that has helped that area. So I'm thinking to myself that they're probably still on a tier 2 water restriction level in Mexico. Of course, Mexico City is like 30 million people, and plus they recently had a volcano, and plus the city itself is sinking. The whole city is sinking. So there's just lots and lots of different issues that a lot of people aren't thinking about, just like our government over here. And whenever they was talking this morning about a 3.2% raise increase with people with disabled and people that's on Social Security, does the people that does these equations with the Social Security Administration, do they put into play towards what to expect for next year compared to what we went through this year? Are they only looking at where we are today and versus what we have done or where we have come from last year? That's what I want to know, pertaining to how did they do an assessment, because the year before last we got something like a 7 or a 6.5, or it was a very, very high substantial amount of raise that your retirees and your Social Security people wound up getting. And to be quite frank with you, a 3.2 in comparison to what they're talking about as far as supply chain issues, higher prices, etc., etc., etc. And plus you can see right now, looking around in the grocery stores and etc., and how higher parts are. You can go to Lowe's and look at how much various goods are in Lowe's and various things like that. I mean, I bumped into a guy last night in Waverly, Tennessee. It was a young boy and a girl. They was looking at bicycles. And he looked at me. He goes, "I don't think I can afford this bicycle." I go, "How much is it? About $100 more than what it was?" He goes, "No." He said, "This bicycle's almost $400. And he said the same bicycle 2 years ago, you could have probably bought them for like half of that. So the supply chain issues is really something to think about in the equation towards how well is the Social Security participants and those that's on a fixed income, how well are they going to be able to fare next year involving all these other different issues that hadn't even come about yet, but we can see them fixing to come about. Just like that guy was talking about, probably going to have to end up digging another canal or something, taking it from another water system. I mean, there's just issue after issue after issue regarding the forces of nature pertaining to global warming. And then if you'll add that on top of all the other issues that now artificial intelligence has created, that's basically causing mama papa little shops to go bankrupt, because now people rather do online trading than they would go to that particular facility or go to that business. I mean, malls are literally having to shut down in America. Malls. That's in addition towards what went on with the restaurant industry in regards towards them being over 100, I think about 120,000 restaurants shut down, and about 70,000 of those had shut down indefinitely. So where's the end game to all this? Where are we going with all this? That's what I want to know. And do we have people working for the government that are smart enough to look through the smoke screen and figure out just exactly where we are going to be 6 months from now, where we are going to be even a year and 6 months from now? I realize that don't nobody have a crystal ball, and don't nobody know for certain in what tomorrow holds. But whenever you can see a pattern of things going on worldwide, regardless whether it's got to do with artificial intelligence or it's got to do with the weather, phenomenons of the weather pertaining to various water resources drying up, whenever you can see this and you do not put this into the equation, then that goes beyond just being negligent, but now you have become careless to the degree of gross incompetency. gross incompetency, and there has to be some sort of a wake-up call to be able to alert people that's in charge of other people's lives that should have seen this coming on years and years before now, but nobody wanted to listen to them. Nobody wanted to listen to Al Gore. You know, even today, there's anti-Jubies right around the corner where I live right here. People that is anti-Juby. They don't want to listen to nothing that Juby has to say, the individual that's talking in behind the camera right now. And they for darn sure don't want to support him by giving him any money and helping him to establish what God has showed him to establish pertaining to the last day biblical Bible prophecies. So they rather just play this standoffish game, hoping, you know, sweep it under the rug, out of sight, out of mind. All this will go away. This is just a fad. Oh, we're just going through some sort of a routine whenever it comes to the weather doing this or the weather doing that. I got news for people. There's nothing routine about whenever it's a week before Christmas and it's 85 or 87 degrees outside in this area of Tennessee, and all of a sudden an outbreak of tornadoes break out. We're going to have to accept reality towards what reality is if we're ever going to have a snowball chance, and you know what, towards getting out of the storm that we're now presently in. And the reason why that we're presently in these things is because the politicians in the past has not been looking at various signs and looking at various things coming up onto us, and because of it, it has left us bare. We have been blindsided by a lot of this stuff that is causing our misery to even be that much more intense.
It wasn't that, sorry about that, it wasn't that long ago that in Panama the heavy rains were causing problems in the Canal of Panama, led to flooding. So that is really the issue. And the scary thing is, Fred, is we're actually in the rainy season in Panama, so there should be an abundance of rain, which there's not right now. As we get into the dry season, there'll be less rain as typically the weather patterns will go, and that will create more problems. So a problem simply that is too big for any one country to solve.
Right, and the need for commerce and moving it continues and really only gets even bigger. The demand for that even bigger. Patrick Ottman, thank you so much. All right, coming up, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy launching a formal impeachment inquiry into the sitting president, President Biden, amid increasing pressure from some conservatives. We'll discuss that straight ahead.
Is rough and tough, but here's the saving grace, and we've been pointing this out all afternoon. If that wind was onshore, we'd be looking at a tremendous surge and some damage, but because the center of circulation of Lee is off to the east, there's an offshore flow. Winds around low pressure are counterclockwise, so you have a westerly flow coming from the land, so that's why there's not much in the way of storm surge. That was certainly a saving grace from that point. But things were far worse last night, especially along the south shore of Massachusetts, where the wind was onshore. Also, we had an onshore flow in southern parts of Nova Scotia. You saw some of the footage from Dr. Reed Timmer earlier of a significant surge. Wind gusts certainly have been impressive. We've seen wind gusts up over 65, 70 miles per hour throughout this storm. And also, look at some of the storm reports, especially now in down East Maine. Really quickly, there it is across Hancock and Machias. I'm seeing more in southern parts of Washington County. To the radar really quickly here, and you can see the heavy rain wrapping in toward Bangor right now. Again, the worst conditions down East Maine, where we have lots of problems, Bree, around Bar Harbor, where we're getting wind gusts up over 40 miles per hour.
Yeah, Bernie, best to leave those rough waves to the professionals. If you look at the winds, well, it's causing lots of problems. And we also have rain that's coming down pretty hard in Bar Harbor. Look at that scene right there. It looks dreary, but conditions will gradually start to improve as Lee continues to move north. But right now, we're at 61, still experiencing that heavy rain with winds coming out of the west-northwest. Now, overall, we are going to watch Lee continuing to track north and then east, still dumping some heavier rain as we head into the nighttime hours. This is around 9 p.m. Eastern time. Still experiencing some rain across eastern Maine, but note behind it, we've been very dry across a lot of the northeast, the interior northeast, and that's because we've had dry air really fighting any of those rain impacts from Lee. Now, we do have more action on the way. Our next weather maker is set to bring us more rain as we head into early Sunday. Some of the rain could be heavy at times across.
Ran gun drills and even drove around Whitmer's property a couple of times. Molitor and William Null both took a stand in their own defense, admitting to attending gun drills and even taking rides to Whitmer's property. But Null says he and his brother walked away when the group suggested blowing up a bridge near Whitmer's home. The plot was foiled back in October of 2020. Governor Whitmer's chief of staff calls the ruling, quote, disappointing. And on her first show as moderator of Meet the Press, Kristen Welker is starting off with a bang, sitting down for a wide-ranging one-on-one exclusive interview with former President Donald Trump. She covers a lot of ground, including this exchange about whether Trump would pardon himself if reelected as president.
Mr. President, if you were reelected, would you pardon yourself?
I could have pardoned myself. Do you know what? I was given an option to pardon myself. I could have pardoned myself when I left. People said, would you like to pardon yourself? I had a couple of attorneys that said, you can do it if you want. I had some people that said, it would look bad if you do it, because I think it would look terrible. I said, here's the story. These people are thugs, horrible people, fascists, Marxists, sick people. They've been after me from the day I came down the escalator with Melania. And I did a great job as president. People were acknowledged. Great economy, great jobs, great this, great that. Rebuilt the military, Space Force, everything. I could go on forever. Let me just tell you. I said the last thing I'd ever do is give myself a pardon. I could have given myself a pardon. Don't ask me about what I would do. I could have, the last day, I could have had a pardon done that would have saved me all of these lawyers and all of these fake charges, these Biden indictments. They're all Biden indictments, political. They indicted. They want to arrest their political opponents. Only third world countries do that, banana republics. So, ready? I never said this to anybody. I was given the option. I could have done a pardon of myself. You know what I said? I have no interest in even thinking about it. I never even wanted to think about it. And I could have done it. And all of these questions you were asking me about the fake charges, you wouldn't be asking me because it's a very powerful thing for a president. I was told by some people that these are sick lunatics that I'm dealing with. Give yourself a pardon. Your life will be a lot easier. I said, I would never give myself a pardon.
Even if you were reelected in this moment?
Well, I think it's very unlikely. What did I do wrong? I didn't do anything wrong. You mean because I challenged an election, they want to put me in jail?
There is a lot more on Trump's legal cases, as well as other topics, including the economy, abortion, and much more. You don't want to miss it on Meet the Press Sunday morning. We should note Kristen has also extended the same invitation for a one-on-one interview with the president. Colorado Congresswoman Lauren Boebert issuing an apology after being kicked out of a production of the musical Beetlejuice in Denver. An incident report said Boebert was vaping and causing a disturbance. She initially denied vaping, but video from the theater contradicted her account. In a statement, Boebert said in part this: there's no perfect blueprint for going through a public and difficult divorce, which over the past few months has made for a challenging personal time for me and my entire family. I've tried to handle it with strength and grace as best I can, but I simply fell short of my values on Sunday. That is unacceptable, and I'm sorry. All right, new negotiations today in the United Auto Workers strike. Up next, I'll speak to Charles Wade, one of the thousands hitting the picket line to try to get a fair deal. I'll be right back.
Sometimes, if you get to reading the King James Version Bible right now, any and all the above that Jesus predicted that give out advisories towards is now coming true. Full face, flat-footed, all over the world. All over the world. All over the world.
government here in this state, and that's why so many people watch all of this so closely. So, a resounding vote here for Ken Paxton this afternoon. The vote took almost 2 hours to go through all 16 articles of impeachment, but Ken Paxton has been acquitted, and he will be returning to his job as Attorney General. Frederica?
So, Edwin, you mentioned that there were 2 Republicans that did vote to impeach Paxton. Were there ever more than that who perhaps changed their minds and decided to acquit?
Well, so if you remember, before the vote took place and before this impeachment trial even started, all of these senators could have voted with a simple majority to dismiss all of the impeachment articles of impeachment before the trial even started. That vote was 24 to 6. So there were 6 Republicans that most people thought were in lockstep with Ken Paxton. But clearly, Ken Paxton got many more Republicans to switch back over to his side, essentially, with him getting as many Republican votes as he did. So that was, a rather, I wouldn't say shocking. I think a lot of people expected Ken Paxton to be able to
astonishing.
Big reason.
Have protection for people who need to have a fair shot in the system, let's say.
Right, and the question I thought was, I was on the faith-based voters, so that's what I was zeroing in on there too. So certainly, look, most voters don't vote on single issue, but faith-based voters very much do. People that want to see abortion outlawed, that are pro-life, absolutely look at that as a one-issue vote, and that's where they reward somebody. But you're certainly correct, and when you're looking at the general population,
I'm going to let this go and leave it at that. Good luck to all of us as we end this program by saying God bless America, God bless our troops. Heaven help us all in all these different issues, because obviously these issues are not only not going to just up and go away, but these issues are only intensifying even as I speak. Regardless whether it's one issue or another issue compounded by another issue. And to be quite honest with you, it is mind-boggling to a lot of people. It's very frustrating. That's the reason why that they really rather not know nothing about the news. They just rather plead the fifth or plead insanity or whatever and just act like out of sight, out of mind. That way it don't get to them to the degree that they feel guilty about seeing something that they feel like that they should be involved in towards helping. But because their financial strains is already strained and they can't help nobody, rather than feel guilty every time they turn the TV on, they just leave it off, pretending to the news. They don't want to hear no news, even though they know that it's bad. So, for what it's worth, there you go there. Heaven help us all. Shalom.